All right, Yolanda and others. So I've got the soup going again tonight, and what I'm going to start with is I'm getting some water boiling for the soft-boiled eggs. We're going to be soft-boiling the eggs for about 8 minutes inside of that guy there, and then rapid chilling it with ice water to get the shell separated. Down here, we're gonna cook off the little smokies until they've got a minor char on them. Over here, I'm gonna get the water boiling for the ramen. It's going to be a 3-minute cook time per the ramen instructions from the package. On the other side, I've staged up getting the eggs ready. The eggs, of course, we just talked about. The ingredients for the broth are going to be soy sauce, minced garlic to taste. We're not going to cook the onions directly. We're going to add the onions to the broth so that it softens them up but doesn't completely cook the life out of them. All the greens is pretty much for the bottom of the bowl, and then on the top we're going to put a little bit of the basil and cilantro, which will be topping things on the soup bowl. I figured out last time from a timing perspective, you pretty much want to cook the ramen first for the 3 minutes boiling here and then put it aside. What that's going to let you do is, instead of having this ultra flavored dish where you're still trying to cook down and make the broth, because it takes a little bit to kind of integrate the garlic into the water, because you're not going to actually put the garlic directly in. We're going to be straining out the what we boil down from the broth container, and then making sure we have that broth super hot like you want it to be inside of a bowl of pho or ramen or anything else. If you wind up trying to cook the noodles the entire time, they'll turn to mush. So avoid that pitfall. So yeah, I will cook these guys first, and then we'll put them aside in a bowl to not cook anymore, so I can come back to them later. Anything that gets cold along the way is going to get fixed by when I pour the super hot broth. So I'm going to superheat the broth, knowing that I'm going to have a few things on the side that are going to be bringing that temperature down a bit. And that even includes the meat. This meat will eventually not be so hot. I'm going to pause and come back here for a second, do a little bit of Martha Stewart magic, and then reshare once I'm ready to go. One thing worth mentioning is that I'm going to try to bring both of these waters up to a boil. I've already got the one for the eggs ready to go. I'll be reducing that to just a minor simmer for soft boiling of the eggs. On the water over here where the ramen's going to be cooked, I want that at a full boil for 3 minutes. Cook it fast and hot, and you want to keep that pretty much just barely cooked enough to soften everything up and get it to separate, because it's going to be exposed to a lot of other heat and things later. And if it's just minimally cooked or just kind of barely starting to separate, that's pretty much good enough because of how much heat we're going to throw at it in a little bit. Talk to you in a moment. Okay, so everything is getting close to the next step. Flip you back around over here. I am using 3 packages of ramen for 2 people. I may not eat all of the ramen, but it is helpful to have the 3 packets of the chicken bouillon for the broth later. I can't cook this guy too slow. You do want to get a good little char on it, but without drying the things out completely. And before I start things going over here, there's a couple of things I'm going to need on this side. So pretty much everything's up to a boil. This is going to be to drain the noodles once I have them cooked for the 3 minutes in here. That comes quickly, and you don't want to be delayed on pulling those out. So we got the something to catch a little bit of the broth. I'm going to scoop things out and keep this hot water boiling because I'm going to make the broth inside of the same pot. I don't want to use the glass that I have the eggs going in. And this is where I will pour the broth once it's ready to go. Okay, the ramen is down. 3-minute timer is hopefully running, and I'm going to run out of battery. Fantastic. Got this guy starting to brown a little bit. That's looking good. And I'm going to wait just because I can't do too many things at once to start the eggs until I'm done with the ramen, because it's just me. So I might mess up if I try to do too many things. Now in the bottom of here, what I used was a little bit of just regular cooking oil, whatever you like to use. I'm actually going to pour this into the broth later. Gross, right? Yeah, I'm not going to throw away the grease. We're going to actually flavor the broth partially with it to make sure we capture a lot of that good smoky flavor. All right, the ramen timer is done, so now we're going to start to scoop our ramen out, and we're going to catch most of our juices in the little plate down below. You see it's just kind of barely broken apart. That's good. It means it's still going to be firm after we expose it to like 10 more layers of heat along the recipe. Now, I'm sure you can probably find ways to be more efficient about this, but I need both hands for a moment. Okay, so instructions for soft boiling an egg tell me to reduce the heat to a simmer instead of a boil. So I'll probably mess that up, but I'm going to try to reduce this guy down a bit. And then I'm going to place the eggs inside of the scooper. I really like the eggs, so there's going to be doing 4 eggs total, 2 eggs per dish. I also know that sometimes I mess the eggs up, so it's good to have a couple of extras in case I overcook one, break one, something just goes wrong in the soft boiling process. That's reduced down to a simmer. Alexa, set an egg timer for 7 minutes. See, I already kind of messed up because that's supposed to be an 8-minute timer. According to how I like them done, a little bit firmer of a soft-boiled egg. So that's kind of a simmer or a light boil, close enough. Now, I'd say that these guys are getting about to be done. I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the heat or turn them down to low on the smokies, and then we'll get on to the broth. This is not an exact science, but I'm just going to take and scoop a bunch of the garlic into the pot. I'm using just the minced garlic. We will filter it afterwards, so we're not going to eat it with all of the garlic just like floating in your mouth. It's not going to be nasty like that. But I'm going to put a pretty healthy amount of garlic into the pot. Ow. Couple of scoops of garlic. Want that to be a nice strong flavor in there. Then we got the Kikkoman soy sauce. And why is that not pouring? I don't know. Another mystery. Ah, I see what I did. I covered up the little pour spout thing inside of it. My kitchen is messy because I don't have the people off screen doing stuff. Woohoo! It's a whole bunch of soy. How much? I don't know. But there's a good amount in there. A little bit more. Now be careful on this step because you know when you put oil and water together it can get all simmery. There's a bunch of oil in there. We're just going to pour it right inside with the broth that's coming along over here. I'm not adding any salt or anything to it. I guess if you like a lot of salt you can. I would rather make up the salt with the soy sauce. I put a ton of soy sauce in there. Back here on the counter, meanwhile, we've got the smokies going. I'm going to chop these in half. This is going to be going into the bottom of the bowl here. The onions, as soon as the broth is done boiling, I will add the onions. Actually, no. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the broth and filter it to get rid of all the chunks of garlic. And now once that's filtered out, then I will add the onions to it and let it settle. Warm it up just a little bit because that's going to be the last thing I pour in on top of the soup to give you the soup broth. And then we'll put toppings on it. Another little trick is save the bouillon for after we transfer the thing into a smaller amount. We don't want to add this to the big pot because it won't be strong enough. We want to have that really good, strong chicken bouillon flavor into this pot instead of that pot. It also kind of gets this weird burnt flavor if you throw it in while it's this hot in here. I'm going to shut this guy off. And then I'm going to set a strainer inside of this guy. It's going to be like magic and things will appear. Okay, a couple of things happened off camera. I took the noodles over to this plate here, dumped the excess goo off of it. I have strained the broth into this container here. The eggs have been moved from the soft boiling pot into the ice water, so now that they should be, hopefully the shells will, do the shelly thing where they separate and make it easy to take them off. And now I add the onions to the top of the broth, and they will basically just turn a translucent color instead of staying as a red onion. All right, magic poof, the red onions are sitting inside of the broth, super hot. Most of the red's going to cook out of them. You'll know that they've softened up after that red kind of disappears and they start to turn that kind of translucent color. Also going to grab the ramen bowls. Nice big ramen bowls. And we will line the bottom of them with some chopped up lettuce. The lettuce gives it a little bit of just some consistency to it as you mix it up. It gives you a little bit of crunch. Kind of ran out of the really good stuff, but I like to use the bottom portion where it's nice and crispy for the most part, but I'm a bit low on that. I'm going to try to slice a little bit more off of here and add it to the bowls. All right, I've given Caitlin the slicing job to cut the rest of the weenies in half so I can make sure everything else is progressing. I'm sure that this isn't dangerous at all and that she's not going to take any. Okay, Caitlin. Hi, Caitlin. Okay, we got the slicing, we got the dicing, we have the onions becoming translucent. That's good. We have this guy over here. These will be going into the bowl. I'm not going to bore you with the peeling of the eggs. That is such a pain in the butt. Oh my goodness. This is one of those things where you just want to be sure that the broth is nice and hot. I will reheat this broth in a moment. I can pretty much do it any time. I just don't want to burn it because it will get a burnt flavor to the broth if I leave it on the stove for too long. Okay, we're going to put the smokies in on top of the greens. I kind of put them down there as a surprise. Like, you want to put them above the noodles, below the noodles? Well, I'm going to give it a stir anyway afterwards, but I don't want to just have a bunch of meat floating on the top. I think that too much meat sitting on the top is kind of unappetizing. So you put the meat down like treasure in the bottom, and then it'll get a stir just enough to be able to see it pretty well on the top.
Runaway.
That's okay. I'm sure if I find the runaway that it won't get eaten. I don't know. I don't see a runaway. Oh, there it is. That one's mine. And meanwhile, we got this guy just heating back up a little bit. Gonna get that nice and hot so that we pour it scalding hot on top of everything. Afterwards, I'll be back when we put it all back together. You might notice that I forgot to put in the chicken flavor, the bouillon, so it's been added to the pot now as it's reheating. Just gotta make sure that I don't leave it on too long. As I've said before, it'll burn. In the meantime, this guy, it doesn't really matter if this gets cold. If this takes a little bit long to get everything kind of situated. This is just pretty much a lump of dryish noodles. They're not cooking more, they're just kind of idling, and they're waiting for everything to be dumped on top of them. Gonna chop up the last remaining greens with the cilantro and the basil, and that'll pretty much be a topping, I like a lot of cilantro, so it's a little bit more of a flavor. Okay, our broth is done. Super hot. I'll turn that heat off. Over here we've got everything ready to go. So we'll just go ahead and add the broth and then our toppings to it. I can't do that on camera. That's the worst part because I need all my hands. Okay, I'm going to garnish this on camera because I think I've earned the right. We've got all the juices in, looking real good there. Just gonna take the cilantro, add it to the top. Add it to the top. Take some of this stuff. Put a little bit in the edges here. A little bit in the edges. And then all we got left to do is my very poorly cut eggs. Gonna push those down in there. Remember, this is extra egg. This might be a bit much for some people, but I really like the egg. So I am putting 2 entire eggs worth in each one of these bowls. And these are soft boiled. They're kind of, soft in the center, mostly firm on the outside. They are a little bit harder to deal with. You can use hard boiled eggs as well. I don't think that it's going to give you as tasty of a result, because when you get the juices kind of inside there with the egg and you start eating that mixed in with everything, that is good. Okay, there we go. I will hit the little snapshot button here for posterity. Take a couple of pictures, and then we will take this guy and give it, without disturbing the eggs too much, give them a good flip. Now we see some of that meat on top. Still see the garnish. Add soup spoons and chopsticks, and we're good to go. Yolanda and anybody else that was interested in making that, now you know how. It only took me about 17 minutes of video footage, which means about 2 or 3 times as long to actually make the food. Granted, it's not super fast. You can probably cut a ton of stuff out of this if you want to make it faster. This is not just a simple bowl of ramen anymore. It is now some good stuff. And from what I've seen in the restaurants, they have like all this stuff made already. So that's how they can bring you out a bowl of ramen so fast. It takes some time. Hope you enjoyed that, and back to our ramen now by the fire.